The war had already been lost. Everyone in the Galactic Coalition knew it, even if no one dared to say it out loud. For 3 long cycles, the Drakari Empire had pushed deeper into Coalition space, burning worlds, breaking fleets, and destroying every defense line that tried to stop them. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, and their commanders showed no mercy. The Coalition's last major fleet now drifted near a broken moon, badly damaged and barely holding formation. Admiral Vaylor stood on the bridge of the flagship, staring at a tactical screen filled with red warning lights and blinking damage reports. "We cannot hold this line," his tactical officer said quietly. Vaylor already knew. Half their ships were out of missiles. A third of their shields were gone. Several cruisers were venting atmosphere and struggling to keep their crews alive. "They will reach the inner systems within days," another officer added. Vaylor closed his eyes for a moment. If the Drakari broke through, there would be nothing left to stop them from reaching the core worlds. "Any response from the humans?" Vaylor asked. The bridge fell silent. Humans were still a new species on the galactic stage, strong, stubborn, but quiet. They were not members of the Coalition, and they had refused to join the war. So far. "They sent a message," the communications officer said carefully. Vaylor turned. "Read it." The officer hesitated, then spoke. "Human Fleet Command acknowledges the situation. They are monitoring developments. No commitment at this time." A bitter laugh escaped someone on the bridge. "They are watching us die," a junior officer muttered. Vaylor did not respond. He remembered the first time he had met humans years ago during a border dispute. They had been polite, calm, and strangely careful with their words. They had not seemed like a war species. The tactical officer suddenly stiffened. "Enemy fleet emerging from warp." Red icons flooded the screen. The Drakari had arrived. Massive spiked warships unfolded into real space, their hulls glowing with weapon energy. They outnumbered the Coalition fleet 2-1. Vaylor straightened. "All ships battle stations," he ordered. "Hold formation. Protect the carriers." The first volley came without warning. Drakari energy beams tore through space, slamming into Coalition shields. Explosions flashed across the void as smaller ships vanished in bursts of fire. "Shields failing on the left flank. We're losing Cruiser 7. Carrier 1 is venting atmosphere." Vaylor gripped the railing as the bridge shook. "Return fire," he ordered. Coalition weapons struck the Drakari line, but the enemy barely slowed. Their shields absorbed the damage, and their ships continued forward. This was not a battle. It was an execution. Then something strange happened. Long-range sensors spiked. Unknown warp signatures appeared far behind the Drakari fleet. Not one, not 2, dozens. The bridge fell silent. "What is that?" someone whispered. The tactical officer's eyes widened. "New fleet entering the system, human design." Vaylor felt his heart pound. Human ships dropped out of warp one by one. Then more, heavy cruisers, massive carriers, sleek destroyers, far more than anyone expected. They did not rush forward. They did not open fire. They formed a wide, silent line behind the Drakari fleet. The Drakari commanders noticed too late. "Enemy vessels repositioning," the tactical officer said. The Drakari ships hesitated, then turned. The first human transmission echoed across all open channels. "This is Human Fleet Command." The voice was calm, flat, controlled. "You are attacking a Coalition fleet under our observation." The Drakari commander replied with a laugh. "Humans are not part of this war. Withdraw or be destroyed." The human voice did not change. "You are standing in human operational space." The Drakari fired. Energy beams lanced toward the human fleet. Human shields flared and held. Every beam dissipated harmlessly across layered, interlocking defense fields. The Drakari fired again, and again. Nothing broke through. The human fleet did not return fire. Yet, the human voice spoke again. "This is your final warning." The Drakari answered with a full fleet volley. That was when the humans moved. Human ships surged forward in perfect formation, weapons activating in a blinding wave of light. The first human strike did not destroy a single ship. It shut them down. Drakari cruisers lost power. Engines failed. Weapons went dark. Entire sections of the enemy fleet drifted helplessly through space. The Coalition bridge went completely silent. Vaylor stared at the screen. "They disabled them," he whispered. "They didn't destroy them." The human fleet advanced again. This time they fired. Drakari warships exploded in controlled, precise strikes. No wasted shots, no wild volleys, just efficient destruction. The battle ended in minutes. The remaining Drakari ships fled. The Coalition fleet still floated in disbelief. A human carrier moved forward and opened a channel. "This is Human Fleet Command. We are taking control of this battlefield. All Coalition ships are under our protection." Admiral Vaylor felt his legs weaken. The humans had entered the battlefield, and everything had just changed. The battlefield was silent. Burning wrecks drifted slowly through space where the Drakari fleet had once stood in perfect formation. Coalition ships remained frozen in place, their crews too stunned to speak. Admiral Vaylor stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical screen that now showed human vessels forming a wide defensive wall between the Coalition and the retreating enemy. "They just took control," his first officer said quietly. Vaylor nodded. "Yes," he replied, "and we didn't stop them." A human carrier moved closer, its massive hull blocking the light of a nearby star. A communication channel opened again. "Admiral Vaylor," the same calm human voice said, "this is Commander Hale of Human Fleet Command. Your ships are badly damaged. We recommend you fall back to our repair perimeter." Vaylor hesitated. "We did not request your intervention," he said carefully. "No," Hale replied, "but we were watching." That answer made the bridge uncomfortable. "You were watching us die," a junior officer muttered. Vaylor raised a hand for silence. "Why now?" he asked. There was a pause before Hale replied. "Because this was the last line you could not afford to lose." Human ships moved into position around the Coalition fleet, deploying drones that began sealing hull breaches and stabilizing damaged engines. Vaylor turned to his tactical officer. "They came prepared," he said, "too prepared for a sudden decision." The officer nodded. "They were already in position." On the human flagship, Commander Hale stood before a large tactical display showing the entire war zone. "They finally crossed the threshold," her second-in-command said. "Yes," Hale replied. "If we had waited any longer, they would have lost their carriers and half their command structure," Hale finished. She tapped the screen. "And the Drakari would have taken 3 core systems within a week." "So why wait at all?" her second asked. Hale folded her arms. "Because humans do not join wars halfway," she said. "We join when the war becomes ours." Back on Vaylor's ship, emergency repairs continued. Human drones worked faster than Coalition engineers ever could, sealing ruptured decks, restoring life support and rerouting power. A human officer appeared on the bridge, wearing a plain uniform and no visible weapons. "I am Lieutenant Carter," she said. "Engineering oversight. Your ship will remain operational within 2 hours." Vaylor studied her. "You sent a fleet," he said, "not a rescue team." "Yes," Carter replied. "Why?" Carter met his eyes. "Because the Drakari were never your problem alone." Vaylor frowned. "What does that mean?" "They were expanding," Carter said. "Testing borders, measuring reactions, seeing who would stand up and who would fold." "And you waited," Vaylor said. "Yes," Carter replied. "Why?" "Because if we stepped in too early," Carter said, "the galaxy would see us as conquerors." Vaylor felt a chill. "And now," she said, "the galaxy will see us as necessary." Across the battlefield, human ships towed disabled Drakari cruisers into holding formations. Coalition officers watched in disbelief. "They're capturing them," someone whispered. "Yes," Vaylor replied, "not killing them." A new transmission arrived, this one from the Drakari flagship. "You have interfered in Imperial conflict," the Drakari commander snarled. "Withdraw or face full retaliation." Hale answered calmly. "You are done here," the Drakari commander laughed. "You think this changes the war?" Hale did not raise her voice. "Yes." The channel closed. The Drakari fleet did not return. They retreated beyond sensor range. Back on Vaylor's bridge, the atmosphere felt different. Hope, fear, confusion. "They just scared off the Empire," the first officer said. "No," Vaylor replied. "They just drew a line." A council transmission arrived moments later. "Coalition command to all fleets. Human forces have entered the war. Repeat, human forces have entered the war." Shock rippled through every Coalition channel. Some celebrated, some panicked, some demanded explanations. Vaylor stared at the human fleet. "They waited until we had no other options," he said quietly. "Yes," Carter replied. "Because now you will not ask us to leave." Vaylor turned sharply. "You planned this." Carter did not deny it. "We planned for this possibility," she said. "We hoped it would never be necessary. And now," she said, "we finish what you started." Vaylor felt a strange mix of relief and fear. "What happens to the war now?" he asked. Carter looked toward the distant stars. "It becomes shorter," she said, "and much more controlled." On the human flagship, Hale addressed her fleet. "Rules of engagement remain unchanged," she said. "We disable before we destroy, we protect civilian zones, we avoid unnecessary escalation." Her officers nodded. They had trained for this moment for years. The Drakari response came sooner than expected. Long-range sensors detected massive fleet movements deep within Drakari territory. "They're mobilizing everything," the tactical officer reported. "Yes," Hale replied. "They're preparing a counterstrike." Hale nodded. "They will try to overwhelm us." "And can they?" Hale looked at the display. "They can try." Back on Vaylor's bridge, alarms sounded again. New warp signatures, hundreds of them. The Drakari were coming back, this time with everything they had. Vaylor felt his heart race. They're not retreating anymore. No, Carter replied calmly. They're testing whether what happened was an accident. And what happens when they learn it wasn't? Vaylor asked. Carter smiled faintly. Then the war truly begins. Vaylor looked out at the human fleet, now forming layered defensive formations far stronger than anything the coalition had ever built. For the first time since the war began, he felt something he had not dared to feel in years. Confidence. The humans had entered the battlefield, and they were not planning to leave. The Drakari did not wait long to respond. Within 12 standard hours, long-range sensors across coalition space began lighting up with massive warp signatures pouring out of Drakari territory, forming one of the largest fleet mobilizations the galaxy had seen in centuries. On the bridge of the human flagship, Commander Hale studied the incoming data with a calm that unsettled even her own officers, because every projection showed a force large enough to crush the coalition and still have ships left over to burn worlds. They are bringing everything, her tactical officer said quietly. Battle cruisers, carriers, siege platforms, heavy dreadnoughts, and auxiliary war groups. Hale nodded. They're not trying to test us anymore, she said. They're trying to erase us. Across the battlefield, Admiral Vaylor stood frozen in front of his own tactical screen, staring at the wall of red icons representing the incoming Drakari armada. They're going to overwhelm us, his first officer said in a strained voice. Even with human support. Vaylor turned toward Lieutenant Carter, who stood quietly at the side of the bridge as human repair drones continued stabilizing damaged systems. They're coming for you, he said. Carter did not deny it. Yes, she replied, and for you and for anyone who stands between them and total control. Vaylor exhaled slowly. You saved us once, he said. Can you do it again? Carter met his eyes. We did not come here to leave halfway through, she said. As the Drakari fleet closed in, the coalition expected the humans to rush forward and meet them head-on, because that was how wars had always been fought in space, with brute force, massive volleys, and desperate last stands. The humans did none of that. Instead, their fleet spread out into layered formations, not forming a single defensive wall, but a deep, wide structure that stretched across multiple vector lanes and gravitational corridors. What are they doing? A coalition officer whispered. Vaylor watched the human movements carefully. They're not preparing to block them, he said. They're preparing to absorb them. On the human flagship, Hale issued a quiet command. Phase 1 defensive pattern, she said. Activate perimeter nets and sensor fog. Human ships deployed hundreds of small, glowing devices that drifted into space, spreading out into a vast three-dimensional grid. What are those? Vaylor asked over a shared channel. Disruption nodes, Hale replied. They interfere with targeting systems, communication signals, and warp navigation. The Drakari fleet entered the grid. Instantly, their formation began to lose coherence. Ships drifted slightly off course. Targeting locks failed. Communication channels filled with static. The Drakari commander roared in frustration. Re-establish formation. Push forward. The Drakari opened fire. Thousands of energy beams tore through space toward the human front line. Human shields flared, not as a single wall, but as overlapping layers that redirected energy sideways instead of absorbing it directly. The beams bent, scattered, and weakened before they ever reached the ships behind them. Coalition officers watched in disbelief. They're spreading the impact, someone whispered. They're not trying to stop it all at once. Human ships did not return fire. They held position. They took the hits. They adjusted their formations slightly, tightening gaps and shifting power flow between shields. The Drakari fleet surged forward, convinced that raw power would break through eventually. That was when the humans changed tactics. Hale raised her hand. Phase 2, she said. Human ships launched hundreds of small strike craft, not toward the Drakari capital ships, but toward their flanks and rear lines. The craft did not fire weapons. They released clouds of glowing particles that latched onto Drakari hulls and sensor arrays. What did they just do? Vaylor asked. Carter answered calmly. Tagged them, she said. We now know exactly where every ship is, even if they go dark. Drakari warships began losing maneuver control. Engines stuttered. Navigation systems failed. Entire wings of the fleet drifted out of formation. The Drakari commander screamed orders. Push through. Ignore the interference. They pushed harder. The humans still did not fire. Instead, they deployed something worse. Human warships activated localized gravity fields in front of the advancing Drakari line. Space itself bent. Drakari ships slowed. Some veered off course. Others collided with each other. Coalition officers stared at the tactical display. They're not just fighting the fleet, someone whispered. They're fighting space. Hale remained calm. Weapons are inefficient when you can rewrite the battlefield, she said. The Drakari finally reached human weapons range. Their dreadnoughts opened fire with their heaviest cannons. Human ships did not dodge. They absorbed. They redirected. They stabilized. Then and only then did the humans return fire, not with massive volleys, not with wide barrages, but with precise, focused strikes aimed at engines, weapon mounts, and power cores. Drakari ships went dark one by one, not destroyed, disabled, drifting. The coalition bridge erupted in stunned silence. "They're dismantling them," Vaylor said quietly, "piece by piece." Drakari commanders panicked. They changed tactics mid-battle, ordering all ships to target a single human carrier. Thousands of beams converged. The carrier's shields flared violently. For a moment, it looked like they might break through. The nearby human ships shifted their shield output, feeding power into the carrier's defense field. The carrier held. The Drakari's massive volley achieved nothing. The human fleet answered with a coordinated strike. 3 Drakari dreadnoughts lost all power simultaneously. A 4th exploded. The rest began retreating. The Drakari commander screamed into his channel. "This is impossible. They are not fighting like any species we know." Vaylor leaned back slowly, his hands trembling. "They waited," he whispered. Carter nodded. "They trained for this kind of war," she said. "They studied everyone's tactics, everyone's weaknesses, everyone's assumptions." The Drakari fleet broke formation. Some ships fled, some surrendered, some continued firing blindly. Human boarding craft moved in. Coalition officers watched in shock as human soldiers boarded Drakari warships and disarmed entire crews within minutes. "They're taking prisoners," Vaylor said. "Yes," Carter replied. "They don't need to kill them." On the human flagship, Hale watched the battle end. "Cease fire," she ordered. "Contain and secure." The Drakari armada was gone, not destroyed. Not victorious. Broken, across galactic channels, news spread like wildfire. The Drakari Empire had thrown its full strength at the humans, and lost. Not because humans were stronger, but because they fought differently. Vaylor stood in silence as the final Drakari ships drifted away. "They weren't weak," he said. "They were waiting." Carter met his eyes. "Yes," she replied, "and now everyone knows." The battle ended, but the war did not. That truth settled over the coalition fleet like a heavy fog as the last disabled Drakari ships drifted helplessly through space, surrounded by human warships that did not celebrate, did not taunt, and did not even power down their weapons yet. Admiral Vaylor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching human boarding teams escort Drakari prisoners into containment craft with calm discipline. And he felt a strange mix of relief and unease, because this victory had not looked like any victory he had ever seen before. "They didn't destroy them," his first officer said quietly. "They dismantled them." Vaylor nodded. "Yes," he replied, "and they did it without anger." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread faster than any official message could have, because independent traders, long-range sensor stations, and neutral observers had all recorded the same impossible event, which was that the Drakari Empire had thrown its full military strength at the humans and had been quietly, precisely, and completely outmatched. In council chambers that had never imagined such a moment, delegates argued in rising voices as holographic projections replayed the same tactical data again and again, because none of their models could explain how a young species with no empire and no ancient fleets had defeated a galactic superpower without even committing its full force. "They fight like machines," one delegate hissed. "No," another replied, shaking his head. "They fight like planners." "They did not rush," a third added. "They did not escalate. They controlled the pace of the entire battle." The fear that followed those realizations was not loud, but it was deep, because if humans could do this once, they could do it again. And if they chose not to, it would not be because they were unable. Back on the battlefield, Commander Hale addressed both the human fleet and the coalition ships over a shared channel. "All Drakari vessels are to be contained and secured," she said calmly. "Coalition ships will hold position until rescue and repair operations are complete. No pursuit beyond this system is authorized." Admiral Vaylor turned sharply toward his communications officer. "She's ordering us," he said. The officer hesitated. "And you're not objecting," he added. Vaylor exhaled slowly. "No," he said, "I'm not." Because deep down he already knew that the humans had taken command of the war without ever asking permission, and no one had stopped them. On a distant Drakari world, the Imperial High Council convened in emergency session as reports from the shattered armada arrived in broken pieces, each message worse than the last. "They disabled our ships," one warlord growled. "They boarded them, they took prisoners. They outmaneuvered us," another snapped. "They predicted our tactics before we executed them." The Drakari Emperor slammed his clawed hand onto the council table. "This is a fluke," he roared. "A lucky battle, they will bleed if we hit them again." A senior strategist shook his head slowly. "No, Majesty," he said. "They were not improvising, they were executing a doctrine." Silence fell. "What doctrine?" the Emperor demanded. The strategist swallowed. A doctrine built around control, not destruction, he said. They are not trying to win battles, they are trying to make us unable to fight at all. The Emperor stared at him. That is impossible. The strategist met his eyes. So was everything that just happened. Back on the Coalition flagship, Vaylor met with Commander Hale in a quiet briefing room that overlooked the drifting wreckage of what had once been the Drakari's pride. You could have wiped them out, Vaylor said carefully. Why didn't you? Hale folded her arms. Because that would only prove their fears right, she replied. And what are their fears? Vaylor asked. That humans are just another empire waiting to rise, she said. Vaylor frowned. And you're not. Hale met his gaze. No, she said, we are something else. What does that mean? He asked. Hale turned toward the viewport. It means we are not here to replace the Drakari, she said. We are here to stop the cycle that created them. Vaylor felt a chill. You're talking about reshaping galactic power. Yes, Hale replied, quietly, slowly, without declaring ourselves rulers. And what happens to those who resist? Vaylor asked. Hale did not answer immediately. They will find that war becomes very hard to sustain, she said at last. The Coalition Council responded to the battle within hours, sending a joint delegation to meet with Human Fleet Command, demanding explanations, assurances, and boundaries. They did not receive any threats. They did not receive any apologies. They received data, battle records, strategic breakdowns, doctrine outlines, human operational rules. They're showing us how they fight, one counselor whispered. Why would they do that? Another asked. A human diplomat answered calmly, because we are not hiding our intentions. And what are those intentions? The counselor demanded. To reduce the number of wars in this galaxy, the diplomat replied. The council chamber fell silent. Back on the battlefield, Coalition ships completed emergency repairs and began preparing to withdraw under human escort. Vaylor stood on his bridge, watching human warships reposition into long-range patrol patterns that extended far beyond the original battle zone. They're not leaving, his first officer said. No, Vaylor replied. They're setting a perimeter. Against what? The officer asked. Vaylor thought of the Drakari Emperor, of the council delegates, of the way the humans had waited until the exact moment when intervention could no longer be misunderstood. Against anyone who thinks the old rules still apply, he said. A final message arrived from the Drakari Empire. It was not a threat. It was not a demand. It was a request for negotiations. Vaylor stared at the display. They're asking to talk, he whispered. Hale stood beside him. They finally understand they can't win, she said. And what will you demand? Vaylor asked. Hale shook her head. Nothing, she replied. Vaylor frowned. Nothing. We're not here to take territory, Hale said. We're here to make sure they don't take it either. Vaylor looked out at the stars. You just broke the balance of power. Hale met his eyes. No, she said. We replaced it with accountability. Vaylor felt something heavy settle into his chest. The war was no longer about territory or fleets or empires. It had become something far more dangerous. It had become about whether the galaxy would accept a species that refused to play by the rules everyone else had written in blood. And as the Drakari Empire prepared to negotiate, and the Coalition struggled to understand what had just happened, one truth became impossible to ignore. The humans had entered the battlefield, and now they were rewriting what the battlefield meant. The negotiation chamber was built for power. Tall pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling that glowed with soft red light, casting long shadows across a circular table large enough to seat entire war councils. At one end sat the Drakari delegation, their armored forms stiff and tense. At the other sat the humans, only 3 of them, no banners, no armed guards inside the room, no show of dominance. Admiral Vaylor watched from the side of the chamber, standing beside Zyrakal and a handful of neutral observers, and he could feel how wrong the balance of the room was. The Drakari had arrived with 12 warlords. The humans had arrived with a diplomat, a fleet commander, and a quiet woman in a plain uniform who had not yet spoken. The Drakari Emperor's representative leaned forward, his claws resting on the table. You disabled our fleets, he said. You boarded our ships. You humiliated us before the galaxy. Commander Hale did not react. We stopped your invasion, she replied calmly. Nothing more. You could have destroyed us, the warlord snapped. Why didn't you? Hale's voice remained steady. Because destruction ends conversations, she said, and we want one. The warlord's eyes narrowed. You want concessions? No, Hale said. We want stability. A low hiss passed through the Drakari side of the table. The Emperor's representative gestured sharply. You are not an empire, he said. You have no authority to dictate galactic order. The human diplomat finally spoke. We are not dictating anything, he said. We are offering a framework. The Drakari warlord scoffed. And what does this framework demand? Hale answered. That you stop expanding by force, that you recognize neutral systems, that you accept arbitration instead of invasion. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The warlord laughed, a harsh, metallic sound. You expect the Drakari Empire to abandon conquest? No, Hale replied. We expect you to abandon suicide. That broke the room. Shouts rose. Chairs scraped. Guards tightened their grip on weapons. Admiral Vaylor felt his heart hammer. This was where it would fall apart. Then the quiet woman in the plain uniform finally spoke. You lost a third of your fleet without a single human casualty, she said gently. If this becomes a real war, you will lose your empire. The Drakari warlord froze. You threaten us, she shook her head. No, she said. We are warning you. The Emperor's representative stared at her. You think you can police the galaxy? No, she replied. We think we can stop it from burning. The Drakari delegation withdrew for private consultation. The humans did not move. Vaylor leaned toward Zyrakel. They're not even pretending this is equal, he whispered. Zyrakel shook her head. They don't need to, she replied. They already proved it. When the Drakari returned, their posture had changed. Less rage, more calculation. We will agree to a ceasefire, the warlord said stiffly. We will suspend military expansion in contested systems. Hale nodded. And we will participate in arbitration, he continued, under human oversight. The chamber went still. Vaylor felt his breath catch. They had accepted. The treaty was signed hours later. The galaxy reacted within minutes. Some systems celebrated, some panicked, some quietly shifted alliances. The Drakari Empire had not fallen, but it had been stopped, for the first time in its history. Back aboard her flagship, Hale stood alone in the command chamber, staring at a rotating map of galactic influence that now showed wide regions marked as neutral under human-backed protection. Her second-in-command entered quietly. They accepted everything, he said, easier than expected. Hale did not look relieved. Because this isn't the real test, she replied. What is? Whether they actually follow it. Before he could respond, an alarm chimed softly. Long-range sensor anomaly, the tactical officer reported. Not Drakari, not Coalition, unknown origin. The room shifted. Where? Hale asked. The display zoomed out, far beyond the edge of map space. Energy spike detected near an uncharted system, the officer said. Gravitational distortion consistent with artificial transit. Hale felt a chill. Another empire? No known signature, the officer replied. And it's big, the signal repeated, then another. 3 arrivals, not near the Drakari, not near human space, near the neutral zone. They're watching, Vaylor said quietly, having entered behind her. Hale turned. You felt it too, she said. Vaylor nodded. Every time a new power rises, something older notices. The Coalition Council reconvened in emergency session. The humans just broke a galactic empire, one delegate said. Of course something is reacting. Zyrakel studied the sensor data. These signatures are not like anything we've seen, she said. They're not even using our physics properly. A counselor swallowed. Are they hostile? No, Zyrakel replied. Not yet. Then what are they? Observers, she said. The same thing the humans were until they weren't. Back on her flagship, Hale received a secure message from Earth. Unknown contacts confirmed. Maintain non-aggression posture. Do not escalate, she exhaled. They just had to make this harder, her second muttered. Hale allowed herself a thin smile. They always do. A human scout ship approached the anomaly zone, broadcasting the same simple signal the humans had used when they first entered the war. We are here. The response came minutes later, not in words, in pressure. Space bent gently like a distant hand testing the fabric of reality. Human sensors recorded everything. Then a message resolved, not a threat, not a greeting, an evaluation. Subject, humanity status, unexpected classification. Under review, the room went silent. Vaylor whispered, They're judging you. Hale stared at the message. Good, she said. Her second looked at her sharply. Good. Yes, she replied. Because it means we finally matter enough to be noticed. She turned back to the star map. We just taught the galaxy how to stop fighting, she said. Now something ancient wants to know why. Outside the viewport, the unknown distortions hung silently in deep space. Watching, waiting. And for the first time since humans had entered the battlefield, Hale felt a new kind of danger. Not from conquest, not from empire, but from something that decided which civilizations were allowed to survive. The ancient ships did not look like ships. They were not built from metal or crystal or any material known to human science. They appeared as layered shapes of dense shadow and light, held together by forces that bent space itself. They moved without engines, without visible propulsion, and without sound. They simply existed, and that alone terrified everyone who saw them. Across human and coalition space, long-range sensors struggled to lock onto the 3 massive structures now hanging near the neutral zone. Data returned inconsistent readings. Mass changed from moment to moment. Energy signatures rose and fell without pattern. "They are not using technology," one human analyst whispered. "They are using physics like a tool." On the bridge of her flagship, Commander Hale stood with her hands clasped behind her back, staring at the silent distortions ahead. "They're not attacking," her second said carefully. "No," Hale replied. "They're deciding." The Coalition Council demanded an emergency audience with Human Fleet Command. "You brought this on us," one delegate snapped. "You broke the balance of power. Now something older than all of us is watching." Hale did not deny it. "Yes," she said calmly, "and if we hadn't, they would have watched anyway. We just made ourselves visible first." Zyrakel stood quietly at the edge of the chamber, her crystalline form dim. "They are the Watchers," she said softly. "An ancient civilization that monitors emerging powers. They remove those they believe will destabilize the galaxy." Silence fell. "Remove," a counselor whispered. "Erase," Zyrakel replied. Back near the neutral zone, a human scout ship approached, the nearest Watcher structure broadcasting a simple signal. "We are here to communicate." The response came slowly. Space folded inward around the scout ship, not enough to damage it, but enough to freeze it in place. Sensors overloaded, gravity spiked. "Scout ship pinned," an officer reported. "Shields holding," another added. Hale clenched her jaw. "Do not fire," she ordered, the scout ship's captain transmitted calmly. "We are not hostile, we request dialogue." The reply came as a burst of data that slammed into human systems like a tidal wave. It took minutes to decode. When it finally resolved, the bridge went silent. Species, humanity assessment, rapid expansion, high adaptability, conflict dominance risk level, extreme status, under evaluation, her second whispered. "They're considering wiping us out." Hale nodded. "Yes," she said, "and they're not wrong about our potential." The Coalition Council erupted in panic. "They will destroy us all because of humans. Withdraw your fleets. Disband your alliances," Hale spoke sharply. No, the room fell quiet. "We are not retreating," she continued, "and we are not submitting." "You'll doom us," a counselor shouted. Hale's eyes were cold. "No," she said. "We'll show them why they're wrong." She ordered a human fleet to move into open view, not in battle formation, in rescue formation. Across multiple nearby systems, human ships began humanitarian operations. They delivered supplies to struggling colonies. They repaired damaged stations. They escorted refugee convoys through dangerous lanes. All of it was broadcast openly, not propaganda, documentation. "They're showing the Watchers how they behave when no one is watching," Vaylor said quietly. Zyrakel nodded. "They're redefining power." The Watchers observed everything. Hours passed, then days. No attacks came, but the pressure in space remained. The Watchers sent another message. "Why do you intervene in conflicts that are not yours?" Hale transmitted her answer personally. "Because ignoring suffering creates bigger wars later." The reply came slower. "Your species has caused wars." "Yes," Hale replied, "and we learned from them." The Watchers shifted position slightly. Human analysts noticed something strange. "They're adjusting their energy fields," one said. "Not in an attack pattern. In a listening pattern." The council panicked anyway. "They're stalling," one delegate hissed, "waiting for the right moment." Then the misunderstanding happened. A Drakari warship, acting without orders, fired a single long-range probe toward one of the Watchers. It was meant as reconnaissance. The Watchers interpreted it as a hostile act. Space screamed. A gravitational wave ripped through the neutral zone, disabling 3 coalition ships instantly. The council chamber erupted in terror. "They're attacking." Hale stood frozen as alarms flared. "Drakari ship identified as source," her tactical officer said. Hale closed her eyes. "They just almost got us all killed." The Watchers sent a final message. "Hostile intent detected. Corrective action imminent," Vaylor whispered. "This is it." Hale did not hesitate. She ordered every human ship to power down all weapons, all shields, all active defenses. "What are you doing?" her second shouted. "Ending the test," she replied. Human fleets across the region went dark. No weapons, no shields, no power spikes, nothing. The Watchers paused. Hale transmitted again. "That wasn't us, and we won't let it happen again." A counselor screamed. "You're making us defenseless." Hale ignored him. "We are taking responsibility," she said, "even for what we didn't do." The Watchers analyzed the data. Minutes passed. Then the gravitational pressure faded. Corrective action suspended. The room collapsed into stunned silence. Zyrakel whispered, "They chose mercy." "No," Hale replied quietly. "They chose evidence." The Watchers sent one final message. "Your species demonstrates restraint under existential threat. Risk level, revised. Status, conditional acceptance." A breath Hale didn't realize she was holding finally left her lungs. The Watchers began to withdraw, not leaving entirely, but no longer in attack posture. The galaxy exhaled. The Drakari warship was seized immediately. Its captain was arrested and removed from command. No punishment followed, just exile. Hale addressed the Coalition Council one last time. "You wanted humans to fight your wars," she said. "Then you feared us when we won them. Now something older than all of us just judged us." She paused. "And we barely passed." Vaylor bowed his head. "You saved us all." Hale shook her head. "No," she said. "We proved we don't need to rule to matter." Months later, the galaxy had changed. The Drakari Empire honored the treaty. The Coalition adopted human arbitration standards. New defense doctrines focused on prevention, not domination, and the Watchers remained distant, watching, waiting. Krathon, now an advisor to the new council, stood beside Zyrakel at a quiet observation deck. "They misunderstood humans," he said softly. Zyrakel nodded. "They thought avoiding war meant weakness." Krathon smiled sadly. "It meant preparation." Far away, a human memorial was built. No statues, no weapons, just words. "We prepare so we don't have to destroy." The humans had entered the battlefield, and in doing so, they had taught the galaxy the most dangerous lesson of all. That real power was not the ability to win wars. It was the ability to stop them.